Hey everybody, Steve Billman here. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about secondary dominance, which is an interesting subject. I'm not going to go into extreme depth into the theory behind the secondary dominance. I'm going to do that in my videos, my harmony and theory videos. But I'm going to give you the tools to use these to enhance your progression. Okay. So let's start with just identifying what a dominant chord is. So a dominant chord, as we have found from our previous videos, is a chord that's structured as a major triad, but on top of it, it has a minor seventh. So it is a seventh chord. It is a four-note chord. Again, it has a major triad with a minor seventh on top. We found this out by harmonizing the G major scale. We found that the fifth step of the scale of G, D, was a D7 chord. And again, that's how we identify a dominant seventh chord. So it had a major triad, D, F sharp, A, and then a minor seventh on top, which is a C natural in this case. So D7 is the fifth chord of the G major scale. Now, in every major key, no matter what key it is, that five chord is always, if it's a seventh chord, it will always be a dominant seventh chord. So what we call this is the primary dominant. So this, again, is natural to every major key. The fifth step is always a dominant seventh chord. And again, we refer to that as the primary dominant. So these secondary dominants are going to be constructed the exact same way, a major triad with a minor seventh, but the five chord is not included as a secondary dominant because, again, we call it the primary dominant. So these secondary dominants are going to create, it's the same chord structure, but it's going to create one note on each one of the chords that's going to be outside of the diatonic key. The thing about the D7 chord is every single pitch on the five chord is diatonic to the key of G. The D note is in the key of G, F sharp's in the scale of G, A is as well, and so is C. When we create these secondary dominants, again, there will be one note that's going to be outside of the key, which is going to bring a element of surprise and sort of like, you know, what's happening here. You're going to hear or you're going to feel that one note. You're going to feel it because it's going to be a surprise and you're not going to be expecting it. And again, that's the purpose of, you know, of using concepts like this, is to kind of catch the listener off guard. Not so much that you lose them, but to a point where it brings a surprise to them. And you're going to hear that as we play it. So I'm going to create a really simple progression, and then we're going to use these secondary dominants to kind of enhance that progression. All right, so let's look at the progression first. So I'm going to use diatonic, simple, structured progression. So here are the chords. G major, and again, we're in the key of G major. So the one chord, G major, E minor, the sixth chord, A minor seventh, the two chord, two minor seven chord, and then D, the five chord. Now, you can see that I'm using triads, but I'm also using one seventh chord, the A minor seven chord. So like I said in previous videos, it's okay to mix and match the triads and the seventh chords. It doesn't all have to be triads or all seventh chords. You can mix and match them, okay? And that's what I'm doing in this progression. All right, so again, the one chord, G major, the sixth chord, E minor, the two chord, A minor seven, and the five chord, D major. So I'm gonna play it. I'll play that progression for you so you can hear it. So every chord that I'm playing is obviously, it's diatonic to the key of G major, right? There's nothing outside of the key. And again, perfectly fine. A lot of tunes have been written with diatonic changes only, and you could create a really nice tune just from that progression. It's fine. But let's add some more tools to our tool belt. And again, this will give you the option if you get to a place where, it's the progression is okay, but it needs a little something. Well, this is a way you're going to be able to add that little something. It's not going to be so far out that it's going to be foreign necessarily to the key, but it's going to be enough to where, again, it's going to bring a little bit of surprise or a little bit the harmony, a little bit of richness to the harmony. So what we're going to do, I'm going to play G major as the one chord, the same as I did, but instead of E minor, the sixth chord, I'm going to turn that into an E7 chord. So let's look at those two chords for a second. So naturally, the sixth chord in a major scale, when you harmonize it, it's going to be a minor chord. And in this case, I'm using it as a triad. So on my guitar, I'm playing E, B, E, and G. But if we look at it in terms of the root, the third, the fifth, it is E is the root, G is the minor third, and B is the perfect fifth. So again, when I play this chord, it's represented by a minor third. When I play an E7 chord, remember the structure of a dominant chord, major triad, minor seventh. So E would be my root. I'm not changing the root. G sharp instead of G would be the major third. B is my perfect fifth, same note. And then D would be the minor seventh. So the B and the D are in the scale of G major, right? B is the third step, D is the fifth step, but it's that G sharp that's not in the key of G major, right? The G natural is in the key of G major. So that one note, that G sharp then is going to stick out and it's going to catch our ears in a surprising way, okay? So again, all I did was I took the E minor chord in the original progression and I made that E instead of minor, I made it an E7 chord, which gave me that secondary dominant. And again, in the theory videos, I'll get into, the theory behind a secondary dominance, so you'll understand them a little bit better. But just for now, just understand, as in your chord writing, your chord progression writing, that this is a tool that you can use. So let me play the original progression, and then I'll play the progression with the E7, and you'll hear the difference. So here's the original progression. 2, 3, 4. G major, E minor, A minor 7, D. Now here it is with the E7. G major, E7, A minor 7. Let me play that one more time. One more time, the E7. G major, E7, A minor 7, and D. Back to G. Okay, so you can hear when I hit that E7 chord, that G sharp, that one non-diatonic note, sort of catches you off guard a little bit and sort of, perks you up and like, whoa, what just happened? So again, these are tools to use, but you don't have to use them. But this is something that you can utilize if you're at a place where you're like, the progression needs a little something. I'm not sure what. Try it. See if it works. You might hate it. That's okay. But at least you have this tool now to use. So let's now, since we did the E7 chord, let's try it with the A minor 7 chord. So I'm going to play the same progression, but instead of E7, I'm going to play A7. And with that, again, an A minor chord. If you look at it, A, C, E, that third, the C, is a minor third. If I raise it a half step, it becomes a major third. A, C sharp, E, and then G would be the seventh. So remember, dominant chord, always the same structure. Major triad, which means major third. A, C sharp, E, that's my major triad, and then minor seventh on top. All right? So the only note I'm changing, I'm already playing an A minor 7, so the G natural is already there. The only thing I'm changing is the C natural is going to become a C sharp now. Okay, instead of the minor third, the major third, C sharp. Okay, so here's the progression. I'll do the same thing. I'll play the original one, and then I'll add the altered one. 1, 2, 3, 4. this with the A7 now. So here's E minor, now A7. And I'm going to play D7. Play it again. G major, E minor, A7, D7, and then G major. Okay, so again, that one note is sort of taking it somewhere that we're not expecting. Now, I personally like the E7 a little bit better than the A7, and I made the last chord D7. I made it a 7th chord just because I thought it would go better with the A7. But again, you could use the triad D major as well. The idea is that you can mix and match whatever sounds good to you. The bottom line, you guys, is even though these theories that I'm giving you are correct harmonically and theory-wise, the bottom line is going to be what you like. So if something doesn't sound good to you, don't use it. There's no reason to use it if it doesn't sound good to you. So for me, in this particular progression, I like the E7 better. And so I would probably choose that over the A7. But the A7, again, is not incorrect. It's just a personal taste thing. So let me try now to add both of those chords. And you'll see that by adding both the chords, it takes it out even a little bit farther. Remember, we're not changing keys, but we are introducing some non-diatonic notes that is sort of, not changing the key, but it's sort of taking it outside of the key. And so our ears are going to be a little bit confused for a minute, like, wow, where are we going? But then when we hit the D chord, going back to the G chord, then we can see, oh, we're still in the key of G major. But wow, we just took a journey somewhere, okay? So as usual, I'll play the original progression, and then I'm going to add the E7 and the A7. 2, 3, 4. E minor, A minor 7, D. Okay, here comes the change now. G major, E7, A7, D7. I'll do it again, G major, E7, A7, D7, and then G. All right. So again, you guys, this is an option. I would encourage you to play with it, see what you like, what you don't like. You don't have to use it. And certainly you could use the original progression. It's a fine progression. It'll work. You'll be able to write a nice song with it. But again, this is a tool for you whenever you get to the point where your progression just seems like it's stagnating a little bit, and maybe it just needs a little something. These secondary dominants can really work wonders for your progression. So experiment with it. Now, there's only 2 in the harmonized scale that you don't want to, that are not secondary dominants. The first one we already talked about is the D in the key of G, the D7 chord, the 5 chord. Why can't you call it a secondary dominant? Because it's already a primary dominant. It already has a title. So that 5 chord is not going to be analyzed as a secondary dominant. It's the primary. Okay. The other one is the 4 chord, and I'm not going to get into details again. I'm going to wait for the theory part of this discussion, but the 4 chord has a different function as a dominant chord. It can be a dominant chord, but it relates more to a blues progression, and it's not recognized as a secondary dominant. So the 4 chord and the 5 chord you don't want to use for secondary dominants. But the 1 chord, actually, in this case G major, can be a G7 chord. We've already talked about the 2 chord. In this case, A minor can be A7. The 3 chord is B minor. That can be a secondary dominant, B7. The 4 chord and the 5 chord you don't use. E minor, we already did in the progression, can be E7. And then even the last chord, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, the 7th chord, you can use as an F sharp 7th chord. All right. And again, in the theory videos, I'll get deeper into the function of secondary dominants, where their tendency to resolve is, how they relate to the key. There's a formula to creating the secondary dominants. I'll get deeper into the theory part of it as I put up the theory videos. But hopefully that's enough for you to kind of experiment, create a diatonic progression, and then Try to take one or two of those chords that are diatonic and make them dominant chords and see if you like it. Remember the fourth and the fifth step. The fourth, you don't want to consider secondary dominants. Those have different functions. But any of the other chords, you can take the minor chord or the major chord and you can turn it into a dominant chord. All right? So experiment with it and see what you can come up with in your progressions. All right, thank you everybody. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.